If we are not great men first, we will never be good husbands or good fathers. So today we're going to be diving into what it truly means to embody the mindset of a man of strength, virtue, and purpose. Some of the things that I really want to highlight are, before you can lead, before you can provide, before you can be a protector, we first must master our own minds. Because true masculinity starts in the mind and flows outward in every action that we take. Some of the biblical frameworks for manhood, Genesis 2:15. The Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. So men were called to work, cultivate, and steward. The mindset of responsibility is something that is foundational from the beginning. And then Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So masculinity is also sacrificial. True strength lies in serving and protecting and leading people with love. I mean, if we think of some of these, for the Genesis and Ephesians, from the very beginning, we've had these responsibilities that are still applicable to this very day, whether it be work, to cultivate, to serve, to protect. I mean, men have been the protectors since day one and still to this day in what's soon to be 2025. We are called to work, cultivate, etc. So when we understand that these are ingrained in us biologically, biblically, there's no escaping it. So if a man's mindset must align with God's purpose for him to be a protector, provider, spiritual leader. So in order to do any of these things, it requires emotional control, humility, and the ability to rise above any of our selfish desires. I mean, we are men, we have selfish desires, but we have to acknowledge those selfish desires and oftentimes put others, their needs before our own. There's essentially 4 virtues in becoming a man. We have strength, courage, mastery, and honor. So like strength, we have physical and mental fortitude to handle any adversity. If we don't have the physical and mental fortitude to handle adversity, where does that leave us? It leaves us almost in a victim state. It leaves us most definitely like in the victim state mentally if we think something has happened to us, or even physically. And then we have courage, facing danger and fear head on for the sake of what's right. How many men these days are known for having courage and doing something for the sake of what's right? Since day one, it's like, the sake of what is right. Are we sacrificing ourselves for our tribe? Are we having to fight for another brother because his life is in danger and then therefore like your life might be in danger? We take the society that we live in today often for granted, but we need to have a mindset that would essentially allow us to live in any century from now and since the beginning of time and now forward. And then we have honor, like living up to the expectations of the group that we're in, our family, and earning the respect. So masculinity isn't about just being a man in isolation because, the whole lone wolf thing, it doesn't work and it's never worked. Being a man among other men. So true masculinity, is sharpened within a group of like-minded individuals who hold each other accountable. It's that iron sharpening iron. Women don't have the ability to dictate what a masculine man is. There may be features of a man that women are attracted to, but it doesn't actually mean that they're a masculine man without a group of other men determining what is a masculine man. Again, in today's society, that has essentially been lost. How do these virtues translate to our everyday lives? From being husbands, fathers, and leaders. And I kind of touched on some of those, but definitely living up to the expectation. So we have a wife. It is our duty to take care of her. We have children. It's our duty to merely take care of them, food on the table, roof over their head, clothing on their backs. But then the expectation of being that leader of the household is we have to take a huge responsibility in raising our children, because too many of the most previous generations leave that up to the women. Now, a woman is the most vital piece of a child's life from the time that they are born to the time that they're about 5 or 6. We never want to take away the mother's love and our femininity from our children. But there becomes a point where we must raise our children and not put that responsibility from when they're 10, when they're a teenager, 13 to 18. Societally, we've been doing that, expecting women to raise boys into men, and not necessarily even showing our daughters what it is to be treated and what they should look for in a father. Even going back to mastery, constantly striving to improve skills and competence. If we are not sharpening our tools, if we're not growing, then we're dying. It's that old saying. So constantly striving to improve our skills and our competence. We need to be around other men to make sure that we are sharpening our skills. We need to be doing that iron on iron in this sense, and having that brotherhood, the courage to face danger. It's like you hear about toxic masculinity, but there's literally nothing toxic about it. And taking away the traditional roles of a man. If anyone remembers the shooting that happened at the movie theater in Colorado a handful of years ago, there was an instance where there was 3 men who were on dates with their girlfriends. They weren't married, and they literally threw themselves on top of these women. All 3 men were killed, and all 3 women lived. And it takes courage. It takes, strength, the mental fortitude. And there's the aspect of honor where it's like a man should be living up to the expectation where he's willing to put his life on the line for a woman who they're so precious and fragile. And yet in society, we want to make a man feel that he should not be taking on these masculine roles and that women can take care of themselves. But if these men didn't do that, and they actually took the woman and used her as a shield, because in a way that's a part of the fabric that society is ripping away from the roles of men and women. It's almost a poster board of what society would rather see, is that women can take care of themselves and men shouldn't be masculine. When it's the fucking opposite. It's like we need to embrace these virtues and we need to spread it amongst other men and to our children. So some masculinity, more principles that we should follow is control what you can. We should be focusing on what we can influence. There's this great quote that goes, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." Think about the thought of just getting worked up over something that we can't control. Like the people who are depressed the day after an election, it's like you literally have no control over the outcome, but yet you're going to allow something that's completely out of your control. And it's so far out of your control, you get one vote out of, we'll just say almost 300 million people or 200 million people. It's not a 200 million people who vote, but you have one of those votes. And then we have something called the Electoral College. And if it doesn't go your way, you want to be depressed and threaten to move to another country. Think about the mindset that puts yourself in. You're truly allowing yourself to be vulnerable, which is being weak. You're allowing yourself to be in such a weak state because something you have zero fucking influence or control over is allowing you to go in a state of depression. And that literally happens amongst men throughout this entire country. Let's talk about enduring hardship. We have to be able to develop a resilience by embracing adversity. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Resilience to adversity. Any adversity that we overcome in our life is really the sharpening of our tools. It's the sharpening of our mind. Resilience. Resilience is something that we almost try to take away from our children. And then naturally we want to take it away from ourselves because we want things to be easy. But anything worth achieving in any life is not easy and should not be easy. I mean, you look at it in sports, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, the amount of work and effort that they put in to be the most resilient in their craft, as you got young, hungry lions coming up year in and year out. And yet the amount of dominance that they were able to impose over a decade, more than a decade. I mean, you could almost look at Tom Brady and say he had 2 Hall of Fame careers. You could look at Michael Jordan and it's like, if he didn't decide to retire in the middle of one career, would he have won 8 in a row? Or if he didn't decide to even retire early, it's like, how many would he still have had? But the amount of resilience that they all have to overcome, whether it's personal, injuries, young up-and-comers, we have to overcome adversity in our life. We have to live with purpose. We have to stay grounded in our values and align every action with our principles. Marcus Aurelius says, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be and just be one. If we are grounded in our values and our actions actually show what our principles are, how does that impact those other people or men around us? Are they going to raise their values? Are they going to raise their standards? Are our children going to grow up with values and standards? It's like this post that I did the other day, that if we don't cultivate our culture in our house, a culture will be created anyways. We have the ability to dictate what that culture is, and every culture has morals, values, and principles. So we have to determine what those are. As far as our mindset goes, like, a man's strength lies in his ability to remain calm and composed under pressure. If you're, back to the sports reference, if it's, game 7, you're down by 2 and you have the ball the last 8 seconds, like, are you able to remain calm and composed under pressure? If you're in the middle of the woods hunting and your family's starving and you are able to stalk a deer or an elk, are you going to remain calm as you draw back that bow and release an arrow with the hopes to feed your fucking family? I mean, that's how we should be thinking about all things, from that's applicable for living in any century, also to our day-to-day work, like remaining calm and composed under pressure. If your house is lit on fire, are we running around with our hair on fire? Or are we calm and composed, making sure that everything's okay? Making sure that that phone call is made and we're getting any valuables. What documents do we need out of the safe? Or are we so uncomposed that it's complete chaos and there is no one to look to for that North Star? Your family's like, man, dad is so crazy right now and uncomposed that it must be the end of the world. When really, there's insurance on the home. You might have to stay in a hotel a couple nights, and then they're going to rebuild this house. At the end of the day, everything's going to be fine. We just have to stay composed. And being able to, control our emotions, our actions, and our responsibility is part of the embodiment of true masculinity. Because if we can't control ourselves, then who is controlling us? What is controlling us? What outside events are controlling us? Let's go over some practical application. Let's reflect on these. Where do you need more strength or courage in your life? Are you leading your family as a servant leader as Christ did? And what is one area where you need to relinquish control over external circumstances? And then here are some actionable steps that I want to encourage you to take. So build a daily discipline that strengthens your mind, whether it's prayer, whether it's journaling, whether it's new gym routine, cold showers, the shit you don't want to do, whether it's waking up an extra hour to do any of these things. Instead of sleeping 8 hours, you're going to sleep 7. And then I want to encourage everybody to surround themselves with other men who will challenge and encourage them. And then identify one way to align your actions with your values every day. So how do we pair those together? What resonated with you most about today's discussion, and how do you see yourself applying these principles? Think about this question, write it down, and put pen to paper and write that down. Masculinity is rooted in responsibility, purpose, and self-control. And we got to think about the biblical perspective. Masculinity is sharpened within a community of men who share the same values. And lastly, and it's fortified through resilience, discipline, and emotional control. And then to top it off, true masculinity isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Every step you take to master your mindset brings you closer to being the man you're called to be. because if we are not great men first, we will never be good husbands or good fathers. If you actually have a brotherhood of men who you can count on, so you got to think of it as a pack of wild dogs, okay? Pack of wild dogs, they are unorganized. They're just a random pack of wild dogs. But then once they form a pack, like a wolf pack, they all have different skills. They all work together in their hunting, right? There's usually like a leader. There's one who provides the skills as far as taking down a prey animal. And then there's the one who like checks the border. He's the one who wants to check, do the patrol. It's no different from men. So when men go off to war, if you enlist in the military, you're put in these platoons, okay? You have the whole military, you have the army, we'll say. And then within the army, there's a division. And then within that, there's like a platoon. And within that, there's guys who you are willing to put your life on the line for because you guys are close. You guys challenge each other, whether it's in shooting or in, we'll say, football. We're constantly challenging each other on the football field in practice. Who's going to throw farther? Who's going to hit harder? Who's going to catch more balls? I mean, that essentially is creating a brotherhood where we're sharpening our skills. It's like, hey man, you don't know the fucking plays. Get on it. Do you need help studying the plays? We're challenging each other, but for the benefit of the group. When you have a group of men, there's always going to be internal challenging. But when there's a goal that's outside of the group, men always unify. It's like if there's a football game, we're all united to go beat the other fucking team. Now during practice, we want to one-up one another, but it helps us get better. So it's no different than having a brotherhood that's not in sports. So now take it out to, whether you're 40 or you're 30 or you're 50, and you have a group of men. It's like, all right, hey man, how are you doing with your lust? You have an amazing wife and family. Like, how are you doing with your lust? Or, hey, you going to the gym, you're getting a little soft. Like, we got to keep each other soft. Or like, hey man, I noticed that you, that wasn't cool the way you talked to your wife at the barbecue. And it's like, what do you mean? And it's like, don't be disrespectful to your wife in public like that, and with your kids around and stuff. And maybe he doesn't even notice it. And he's like, oh shit. One of my brothers is calling me out, saying, and that should be something I need to reflect on. Am I mistreating my wife in public? Or I'll tell my buddies, they're giving their kids fucking shit for food. It's like, what are you doing? You're openly poisoning your kid. Why do you want them to just eat fucking candy all day? It ain't Halloween 365, or anything. As soon as we have that brotherhood, everything that we're, calling each other out on, supporting each other. It's like, hey man, I'm starting a new business. And they're like, fucking kill it, dude. Kill it. Because you don't need people to bring you down. That ain't a brotherhood. Oh, dude, that ain't going to work. It's like, no, brother, crush it. It's like, again, you're getting soft, man. You going to the gym? It's like, yeah, man, I'm freaking benching 315 right now. It's like, no way. I got to get mine up. There's so many things, hey, I just read this good book. It's like, I just read this good book. You should read this. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And you're like, oh, it was good. Let me borrow it. Dude, take it. And now we're talking about that book. We're looking into other books. And then it's like, you look at the statistics around success and the amount of books that the most successful people read. The high achievers in sales organizations, everything. They read fucking multiple books a month. And then as a brotherhood, if we're sharing books, if we're sharing podcasts, we're pushing each other, it's endless. There's not been a man who's ever conquered another country by himself. But you get a small group of men, you can conquer fucking anything. Do you think Leonidas just randomly gathered those men? Or do you think they had founded a brotherhood the whole time and they were willing to sacrifice themselves? Not because they were called on by a king, but they were called on by their brothers. And that's how they were able to essentially be the 300 that was taking down an army with only 300 men. I tell every man, it's like, watch that, especially the first 15 minutes. It's like, that's what it's supposed to look like. The amount of love he has for his wife, the respect that he has for his wife, the amount of love he's giving his son. And then he goes off to war. He has sex with his lady. He goes off to war. And like, if you look at the whole, there's like a 15-minute part of that. His relationship with his son, his wife, and his brothers. That's what every man needs to literally mimic, with God along their side. It is the best possible life that any man can live, because what gets men depressed is not having a brotherhood and not having a purpose. Those two things. You solve those two things, you solve fucking the mental health crisis amongst men. So to me, my purpose is very simple, because Christ calls us to do only a couple things. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take care of widows and orphans. I literally want to adopt more kids. Anytime I can give money to people who ask for it, I want to give them money. I don't care if they're on the corner with a sign. I'm not the one to judge of what they do with that money, but I cannot resist giving cash away. I will literally carry cash just to give it to any of those people. And if we got protein bars, we got freaking beef sticks, grass-fed, grass-finished, of course. We give those away to as many people like as we can. And I want to just literally help people. And so if Jesus calls us to do just those things, he says that's just what our purpose is as Christians, then that's what we should be doing. Now you can have a guy like David Wise, a multiple Olympic gold medalist. He was gifted with certain skills. And then now he has a platform where he gets to spread all this same information. But even himself talks about how our purpose is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take care of the poor, the orphans and widows. So he knows that it's greater than him just being on a platform and saying, believe in Jesus, I thank Jesus. But that actually allows you to expand that message so much further. So not that someone shouldn't strive for greatness in whatever it is that, that God gifted you with your skills. Strive for that greatness. But just remember, anyone who says that they don't have a platform or they don't have money or whatnot, it's very simple what our purpose is. The term that society has been using, toxic masculinity, has greatly affected men in so many ways, because they use it in the public school system and the college system. They use it online in the media, toxic masculinity. So if you have men essentially raised by men who don't know what it is to be a man, you're just being programmed to think that your masculinity is toxic, that these traits, this urge to want to just wrestle or fight another man, even if it's just for play, should be taken away. If this urge that you should be opening doors for women, you should be offering an old lady to carry her groceries to her car, are stripped from you because we're training women to say, I can open my own door. And it's like, it's just a gesture. It's a gesture that I am being a gentleman. Yeah, you can fucking open your own door. You have fucking arms, But it's the gentlemanly gesture for me to open the door, offer to carry your groceries to your car, etc. I mean, I've heard stories about 9-month-old pregnant woman, no one helping them carry groceries to their car because society has told men not to do those things because women are just fine on their own. When the reality is they're not. And the reason I say that they're not is because there are bad men out there who can take advantage of 99.9% of all of these women. And it takes good men, really good men, who are dangerous and have it under control, under voluntary control, to point out these men. Because here's the thing that used to happen back in the day, is that a woman would be seeing a man, bring them around her father or brothers, and they could tell a wolf in sheep's clothing. Because there's this saying of, there's a sheepdog and a wolf. If the girl brings a wolf home, all she knows is teeth. My dad and brother have teeth and the wolf has teeth. But we don't know the difference because they all look like dogs. But it's going to be a sheepdog who will be able to tell you the wolf. And he's not a good guy. He might have insecurities. He might have legitimate control issues where she's unsafe. But we don't do that no more because a woman, society says, there's toxic masculinity and you can make all these choices yourself and you don't need men. I think it's terrible. And the thing about, unless you were truly blessed with a father who understood the role of a man and being a masculine man, they're not being taught to their sons. So then they fall into that trap. And then a lot of people I know grew up with fathers who were extremely insecure, and they mask that insecurity with aggression and anger and very authoritarian, my way or the highway, very quick to anger. And they're just insecure fucking little men. So that only fuels the toxic masculinity thing, because you'll have women who were raised by dads like that, and that's what they think that guy thinks he's a masculine man, but really he's an insecure man. And so on one hand, women need to be taught the difference between what an insecure man looks like, because they're raised to think that that's a masculine man when it's completely not. So then therefore they're like, yeah, it's toxic masculinity. So there's a whole culture thing amongst boys and girls, men and women, that it needs to be cleared away so we understand what the difference really is. The mindset that you should want to cultivate is, simply put, is you want to be a warrior in a garden, not a gardener in a war. And the way I expand on that, if you take a gardener and put him in a war, he's insecure, he has no confidence, he's easily spooked, and his sword is not sheathed. So his sword is unsheathed. He is walking around with his sword pointed, and anything that spooks him, he wants to point that sword at. Now, a warrior in a garden, his sword is sheathed. There's no reason for him to have it out. He's walking with confidence, and he's cool-headed, and he's able to tend to that garden so it produces fruit. So essentially, he truly is a good man, because a good man is a dangerous man who has it under voluntary control, and it's for the benefit of his family. A warrior in a garden. Or what Jesus says is, the meek shall inherit the earth. The Greek word meek is praus, and praus means strength under control. It's a shitty translation, praus, to meek, because in English we think of meek as like the homeless guy on the side of the road who's just like half asleep all the time, that he is meek. That is not what the word praus, which is the Greek word. The Greek word praus means strength under control, which is a fucking warrior in a garden. And that's who Jesus says is going to inherit the earth. I mean, if you think of Jesus, Jesus was the man who literally represented strength under control. He could have destroyed the entire Roman Empire, the entire Roman army. He did not have to carry the cross. One, he knew that he had to do it for us. But at any given point, he could have, with the snap of his fingers, broken from all the chains, from everything. But he sacrificed himself for us.